What is going on, guys, and welcome back to another tier list video. As you can see by the title of the video, we're going to be doing ready or not mission maps. As you know, I have my complaints about ready or not, but I'm also a person who's put quite a bit of time, close to 100 hours on the game. So obviously, I enjoy it, a lot of the aspects of the game, but there are some other things I don't like about it. But I'm gonna be going over that in this tier list, basically going over the missions, what I like, what I don't like about them, what I don't like about the enemies or how they're set up, and everything else. So we have about over 20. There's like 20 plus maps in Ready or Not. I can't tell you the exact number, but we should have all of them except for the newest ones, which is Operation Boiling Point, which came out last month. So we're going to keep the tier list pretty much exactly how the creator made it, with only 5 tiers. Obviously, S being the best, F being the worst. There's no D tier for some reason, but B will be kind of the middle. I usually like to put C in the middle because I feel like C is just like the what you'd consider mid, but I guess that's going to be B for this case. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to switch this to C. Or no. Fuck it. We'll just leave it like this then. But this should be, like I said, I looked over the maps. It should be like pretty much all of them except for the latest 3. So we're going to be going over this in order of the missions as it is told in the story. So like we're going to start with mainline stories, then we go to DLC as the DLC came out. Which would start with Thank You Come Again, which is like kind of the introduction to the game where you go into a gas station and there are just some thugs there that are pretty easy to get to surrender. It's a super easy map to S tier, even on hard. It was not very difficult. It's even easier to do when you're using lethal weapons because you can just easily dispose of them. They're not wearing any armor or anything, and they're using low caliber ammunition, pistols, and submachine guns. Like they use like Tech Nines and Glocks. So they don't really have anything that could really kill you in like a few shots, and there's not very many of them. I think there's like 6 guys in there. But your objectives is to find the manager, who is obviously deceased, and then find a little girl that made the 911 call. Very small map, but very simple, very easy. Basically just a tutorial. We'll go ahead and put it in B tier. Then we got 23 megabytes per second, which is the follow-up mission, which it's in a layout of a map that I don't really like, where it's like 3 floors in like an apartment complex. And the reason I don't like maps like this, kind of the same thing that happens later on, that I'm going to discuss later on with Stolen Valor, is that like enemies can see you above them, but the way the audio is in this game, you cannot hear people who are above you because it sounds like they're right next to you. Like if you're below somebody in this game, it sounds like they're just inside of you. Like pause. But you know what I'm saying? Like if they're up there talking or moving, it just sounds like they're right next to you. You can't really pinpoint exactly if they're below you or above you. So if you're on like the middle floors or bottom, it's just a struggle. And plus, you can't just look at all the angles going upstairs and stuff. You typically get shot from an angle. And even though they're not using crazy guns, I think they're once again using kind of the same loadout as Thank You Come Again, where they are using like Glocks and Tech Nines and maybe like some kind of submachine gun. Like they're using pistol ammo. They're not using actual rifles. It's just a layout that I don't particularly like. Kind of the same deal where like the enemies are pretty easy to make surrender if you're going for an S tier, and if you're going for like a lethal approach, then it's also not too bad. But yeah, break into this guy who's like has like a history of CP, and you have to arrest him, his brother too. So, and the whole time it's being live streamed, which is pretty funny. But overall, since I don't really like the layout as much, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in C tier. Another map that I don't really like the layout of is Twisted Nerve, which the reason for this is that the enemies can hide. This is like the first map where they added enemies that can hide. And one of the first times I played this mission by myself, it took me like freaking 30 minutes to beat the mission because I didn't realize these guys can hide in like the wardrobes underneath the beds and stuff. But basically, you're just busting in this place to find a meth lab, and there's a lot of tight corridors and all this stuff. It did take me quite a few tries to actually get this one done. I actually tried to use tear gas, and then I realized that tear gas is fucking pointless. in this game because it literally just did not affect them. I think they changed it in one of the recent updates, but when I played this mission, like fucking tear gas didn't do a fucking thing. Like it would not affect them. They would literally basically sit right next to it in the gas basically, but right next to it, I guess out of its actual radius, and just do not fucking just didn't care, didn't cough or anything. They'll shoot you right through it. So that was really annoying. But yeah, Twisted Nerve, not too bad. And like I said, it's just annoying having to deal with those hiding enemies, and there's a tunnel in the back. It's a pretty big map. And there's a lot of corners and rooms and a lot of nukes and crannies that these guys like to hide in, and it could take you a while to find the last person because you can just go into, you wouldn't know that they were there. But it goes across two houses, and in the backyards of those houses are like tunnels dug up that you gotta look for people in. It's pretty hectic, but once again, kind of enemies that don't have very powerful weapons, so they don't really kill you that easily. That's pretty much the only decent thing about that. I'm also gonna put that in C tier. Next up, the first mission I actually like really struggled with on my S tier on hard playthrough, and that was IDs of March. It's the one of the first missions. I don't think it is the first one. I don't think this is in order actually. What comes after fucking? We'll do that later. What comes after Twisted Nerve? I'm pretty sure it's Lethal Obsession, is it not? I'm pretty sure Lethal Obsession comes after, and then it's IDs of March. I'm gonna say that this is the next mission, IDs of March or Lethal Obsession, because I'm almost 100% sure that this is the mission that they introduced traps because they put them on like fucking every door. This is probably the easiest mission in the game, and I would even go as far as to say that's like it's easily the easiest mission in the game. There's only like 4 enemies in the mission. Super easy to S tier. You can get this mission done in like less than 5 minutes. The only caveat of this mission, the whole gimmick of it, is that there are traps like in every fucking door. So you have to play it slow and not just open every door you see. Like if you play it smart and just know that there's fucking traps on every door, the mission's easy. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to say about the layout. There's some weird gaps that the enemies can fit through, but it really doesn't matter, like I said, because it's just there's none of them. But the only caveat about the enemies in this map is that they're actually using high caliber, like they're using like AKs and stuff. But also they're wearing gas masks, like tear gas and stuff won't work on them. So that's like the big thing about them is that they're wearing gas masks. So I'll put that in like middle of C tier. And then I think it's IDs of March, which also has traps in it, in a map that I really struggled with between the traps and just the weapons they were using, because they use like very powerful weapons. Like as far as I know, this is the only map where the suspects can have an M249 fucking light machine gun, bro. And that is absolutely fucking insane. That shit will absolutely fucking destroy you. Like I said, there's traps on doors. There's a lot of fucking rooms they have to go through, and a lot of angles where enemies can shoot you. You die so fucking fast. It doesn't even matter if you're wearing heavy armor. They have a high resistance to like surrendering, so it takes them a while to do so. They're wearing armor plates, so if you're going for a lethal approach, they're going to take a lot of shots to take down, like at least like 2 or 3 well-aimed shots to take down. And like I said, they're using fucking assault rifles and literal light machine guns. But the whole thing is like these guys try to take a life of a politician or something in Los Suenos, and you have to bust in and take out the shooter and everybody else inside. And they're like veterans that are mad about the state of the country because they feel like they've been treated unfairly. But yeah, like I said, between the traps and just the layout and the weapons being used, this was a mission that took me like on to S tier it on hard. It took me like 8 hours to do it. It was absolutely absurd just how long it took me to beat this mission and S tier it. So I don't really mind the layout or the enemies or anything like that. It just wasn't. It was just annoying having to deal with the weapons and stuff that they had. I think the spider was one we skipped. I think that actually came after Twisted Nerve. But basically, it's a bunch of, I think, squatters or something that's held up in a old elementary school. And you just got to go in there and clear them out. They kind of up tier their weapons, so now instead of using like just pistols and stuff and like Tech 9s and whatnot, they're actually using like MP5s, P90s, UMPs, uh, MP5 with the 10 millimeter version, like all that stuff. So You could die quite quickly if you're wearing like light armor. I mean, they will. One of the things I noticed in this game is that a lot of times the enemies like to aim for your soft body parts, and that's what gets you killed. Is your armor usually eats it up, but then your fucking body takes a lot of damage too. So and these submachine guns absolutely rip through you. And getting on the rooftop and clearing the rooftop is an absolute fucking hassle to do in this mission. Luckily, there's not a whole lot of enemies, but with the difficulty on hard, where their aimbot is absolutely insane, the long angles is just completely unfeasible when you're using a shotgun, like which is like the best, by far the best, less than lethal weapon in the game is the fucking shotgun. It's the only one that can make them surrender in one shot and quickly. And on hard mode, you have to have it because if you use the fucking pepper ball, you'll just get fucking you'll get lit up and you'll probably die on like the third or fourth suspect. Like no shit. Anyway, this mission's layout is pretty much like I'd say like Ides of March, mostly indoors with some outside areas. The rooftop, like I said, is the trickiest part of it. There's some outbuildings in there too that don't really have enemies in it from what I remember. There's just like a few enemies outside. There might be one on, and then like two or three on the rooftop, and everyone else is indoors. A lot of tight angles, but as long as you can listen and react fast to the enemies in the area, it's not too bad. Not too many enemies. Like I said, they're not armed super intensely, but they are decently armed, like I said. Probably just going to put it in B tier at the bottom. I forgot this, the B tier is like the mid tier. So I'll just do like this. What comes after the spider? I believe it is, I think after the spider, then it's Ides of March, and then I think it's Cine's Trail. Or no, Greased Palms, I think. I'm trying my best. I really cannot remember what the order is. Greased Palms is a map that is really a struggle because now the enemies have like AKs and M16s and all that junk, like just assault rifles. Some of them have pistols, but for the most part, they're armed with assault rifles. And like I said earlier, when enemies have long angles, especially on hard mode, they are just going to gun you down. So you cannot fight the enemies at long angles in this fucking map. Unless you use like the 40 millimeter machine or 40 millimeter grenade launcher, the M320 with flash grenades. From my experience, usually, especially on the earlier stages of the game, it pretty much makes them surrender immediately no matter the distance. Usually. There are some weird things about the surrender mechanic they have in this game, like I forgot what it's called, the intimidation mechanic or whatever, where it's like kind of random. There are some times where like it literally doesn't matter what you do, the enemy will not surrender. I think that's still a thing in the game, even as I'm recording this on April 1st. I'm pretty sure that there is still that a thing where the enemy just will not surrender no matter what you do. I've complained about this multiple times in my series on S tiering, everything on hard. It's a very common thing. But the aimbot is so insane in this game. If you try to take out an enemy at long range, it's just not going to work. Especially if they have an assault rifle, you're just going to die in like fucking 5 shots. And the thing about Grease Palms is like there's a whole parking lot. Everywhere inside this freaking warehouse is just long angles for the most part, with a few exceptions. But for the most part, this like post office building is just long angles. And not only that, on top of that, you also have to worry about the FISA guy who you have to also arrest because he's like kind of undercover, I think, or something like that. But he'll still shoot at you and kill you. You have to arrest him and you have to deal with him as well. He has like 2 spawn locations. There's also like a soft evidence near where he can spawn, where it's like tore up files or something. And you also have to arrest. You have to secure like the manager and some other person. So there's a lot you gotta do in this map. A lot of tough angles that you have to take. I feel like if you get bad RNG, you're just gonna die. If you get good RNG, it won't be too bad. Honestly, a map that didn't take me super long to beat on S tier on hard, but overall, I mean, if we're talking about hard mode on an S tiering, it's an F, but I'll put it at a C at the bottom. Like I said, the maps with the long angles and big open spaces are just super difficult in this game because of the awareness of the AI and how insane their aimbot is. So what's after Grease Palms? I believe it's Valley of the Dolls, the map that to this day Relapse might take it because I still haven't beat Relapse on S tier yet. But to this day is the map that took me the longest amount of time to complete on S tier is Valley of the Dolls. And the reason for that is there's a lot of enemies for one, a lot of open areas, and more importantly, a lot of fucking windows. There are so many windows in this motherfucker's house. And like I said, the enemies have insane awareness, and it gets to the point. I'll mention this now. It gets to a point where the enemies just always know where you are. After a certain amount of time passes or a certain amount of engagements in this game, the enemy AI will just immediately know where you are at all times, and you cannot get the drop on them. They will literally basically pre-fire you. They always know where you are. They will react to you faster than the human body can actually react to an enemy, and they will kill you, especially after you got taken damage throughout the entirety of the mission. Add that with the glass and stuff and just getting shot through the glass, and there's also situation areas, especially with the windows, the blinds, that you literally cannot shoot through them, even with lethal weapons. You cannot shoot through them, but the enemy AI can. It's fucking weird, but there are certain windows in this map that you cannot shoot through, no matter what. But the enemy can, and that's also fucking annoying. But the map layout is basically you're on a modern house. You have to arrest the ball guy who also is making like CP, which is weird. It's like a whole party going on. So there's civilians everywhere. There's these guys in black suits, which is nice because it makes it super easy to differentiate 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 between the civilians and the suspects, right? Because they're all wearing black suits. They're like their own personal security. So not bad at all differentiating them. It's just that there are a lot of them. For some reason, their submachine guns do a shit ton of damage to you, regardless. You're using like P90s, MP5s with 10 millimeter variants, MPXs and stuff. So they're not using like very high caliber ammunition. But like I said, with the windows and just the layout of the map, it's really really difficult to do it. And once you go out into like the patio and stuff, where the pool and stuff is, and everything like that, then you have the enemies having those long angles on you, and you cannot make someone surrender with a long angle on hard mode. If they're within like if they're outside like a 30 feet fucking radius of you and you shoot them, it doesn't matter. You can shoot a whole magazine. You can shoot a 40 millimeter flash grenade right in their face. They will not surrender. I've proven this time and time again. I think it's such a stupid mechanic. Even playing this with lethal weapons, it's also pretty difficult as well. So this is not an easy mission at whatsoever. But I'm putting it in F tier. This mission has given me so much strife. I can go on and on about how much I hate it. I hate the windows. I hate the layout. I hate the fucking enemies. This is extremely biased. Like I don't think it's that bad of a map. It's just it gave me so much fucking trouble. Like I said, like fucking 18 hours, 18 fucking hours across like fucking 2 weeks or some shit for me to finally beat this fucking mission. This mission, fuck it, bro. Just fuck it. That's all I gotta say. So far in the main, like without including DLC, because I haven't done all DLC missions on S tier on hard. Excluding that, this is the hardest mission in the main story so far, and I have not finished Relapse or Hide and Seek. It's the last two ones I haven't done. But going on to a mission that's pretty freaking easy, we have Ends of the Earth, which is just basically going into a building with like maybe 10 enemies in it, 10 suspects, and it's a singular house, and you have to go and secure evidence of a illegal weapon smithing rink in there. Like they're making illegal weapons for somebody for money. So, but the whole thing is like he's doing this to pay for his mother's like cancer. So it's like it tugs on heartstrings a little bit. And you have to secure the mother. You gotta like secure the equipment to gunsmith and everything else, and the prime suspects who's controlling the whole thing, which was like their sons, her son. So it's probably one of my more favorite maps of the game. I'm not gonna lie. I love the story. I like the story of it. I love the how simple layout is, and it's just an overall really easy map. It's actually a map that you want to S tier because you want to keep everyone alive because they're just like I said, they're just doing shitty stuff to like pay for their mother's cancer treatment. Now I'm kind of like at the point where I'm kind of fuzzy what comes next. I want to say Cineous Trail is somewhere around this area. And this is a mission where it's a lot it's tricky. You got the rooftop, which I mentioned before. Rooftops, big open spaces, they're kind of shitty to deal with. Enemies are once again using submachine guns, so like using P90s, MP5s, MPXs, UMP 45s, and stuff like that. So not too difficult to deal with. Enemies are pretty easy to make surrender, but there are some long areas where you can't get them to surrender. The server rooms can be pretty hectic a lot of times. There's also some glass involved, which I mentioned my problem with that. Especially on trying to S tier something, you usually can't shoot through the glass. The game won't let you with the shotgun even. But a pretty small, compact map. It does have quite a few enemies in it from what I remember, but this is a mission that didn't really take me a whole lot of time to do. Pretty simple layout, mostly indoors, has the rooftop. You have to find the soft evidence, which I can't even remember what it was, and I kept forgetting where it was. I remember it being like a pretty subtle one and pretty hard to find, so that's not something that I particularly enjoy about missions in this game is like having hard to find soft evidences because that can get really fucking annoying when you have to eventually look it up and just wasting time walking around. But overall, don't really have much to say. I think this is pretty much a generic fucking mid-tier map. Once again, like I said, I'm pretty fuzzy about what comes after these missions. I want to say the elephant somewhere mixed in there, which is your first like bomb defusal mission. I forgot how much time you have. I think it's like 15 minutes. Pretty generous considering that there might be like maybe 10 enemies. But there is a difficult part about this mission where the enemies will actively try to kill the civilians. And obviously, if you're trying to do S tier, if a civilian dies, you're fucking fucked because you can't get S tier because you would not complete all the objectives. So that's kind of annoying, especially when you're late into a mission, you're struggling to find the last enemy because it is a pretty big map, but the enemies are just like completely fucking spread the fuck out the entire around the mission. It takes place on a community college campus, and there are two bombs, one on one wing, one on the other. Like I said, you got like 15 minutes to defuse those bombs before I guess they go off and you lose. 10 or so, like I said, maybe a dozen enemies spread out. They have like assault rifles, they have M16s, from what I remember, and like AKs and stuff. So they can really fuck you up. This is kind of a mission that, like, as I was trying to do Valley of the Dolls, I went ahead and did because I was wanting to get a mission done, and I was so fucking sick and tired of doing Valley of the Dolls over and over again. So I went ahead and did this one because I knew it was going to be easy. And it was, like I said, it's kind of like more of a tutorial about bomb defusal and stuff. No traps, easy to find enemies, easy to get to surrender and stuff. But the worst part about it is the fact that enemies, the suspects, will kill the civilians, and then when that happens, obviously you just gotta fucking reset. So it's kind of annoying. So for that reason, I'm going to put it also in B tier. So it's after kind of on the last few missions. I believe Rust Belt is another one that's pretty early on. There's like two different sections of this map. A real small section which when you're outdoors, which is probably the worst section of the map because like I said, if you're on hard, these motherfuckers have the most insane aimbot, so they'll just instantly fucking kill you basically, and you can't fight back because they won't surrender on while you're trying to S tier because you're too far away. So you have to deal with that. You're fighting the cartel, so they have like AKs and stuff like that. So they have good ammo. They have some of them have shotguns, others have pistols. And then you go into the underground section with the tunnels, which isn't very bad because you have the advantage, especially on S tier, when you're in close quarters. From what I've noticed, S tiering is pretty easy when you're on the close quarter maps. When you get to the open ones, it gets a bit more difficult. Enemies are very spread out, so they're pretty easy to find. You have two soft evidences. One is like the cave, and the other one is towards the beginning where you have to get the stolen passports. There are no civilians in these tunnels, so like every enemy, there's like hardly any civilians in the map in general, but once you get to the tunnels, there's no civilians at all, so you know that any enemy person you see moving is an enemy, so it makes it really easy for like lethal. If you're trying to do a lethal approach, it makes it super easy. A very solid map. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in like A tier because of you know Very simple, easy, not a lot of civilians. Pretty simple approach. The caves is pretty cool, except towards the end of it, where it's once again a big open area where the docks are, and they like to sit in the very back of the docks, so it could be pretty fucking difficult to have and deal with that. The tunnels can be pretty fucking confusing too. I will not lie either. But yeah, not bad at all. Definitely one of definitely one of my more favorite maps. Next up, I believe we have Sins of the Father. Was a mission I kind of struggled on, but it wasn't too bad. You're once again dealing with the they call them the Left Behind, which is like I said, those veterans we have to deal with on the Ides of March. So you're going against enemies using like NATO rifles, honey badgers, Mark 18s. They have FALs. It's like some really hard hitting weapons. So you can die super fast in this mission. But luckily, it's pretty tight quarters. But the enemies have like more advanced AI. It feels like to actually use cover effectively, and is able to use that cover to like their advantage. Because if their head is just poking out, you cannot shoot them with a shotgun because you'll just kill them and that'll ruin your S tier. So you have to work around that by either flashing them or whatever, and that you're usually losing like valuable utility by doing that because you would rather use them on on a complete on a room full of enemies rather than just an enemy by itself, or you want to use it on like an hostage situation where they're holding them up, with a gun and stuff. So definitely annoying when that happens and you really can't do anything about it. And yeah, especially when it happens early on, super freaking annoying. But I really do like the map layout. One of my favorites that it goes across 2 floors. Enemies are pretty spread out for the most part instead of like 2 rooms where it's like big open ones. The outside areas, like the balconies and stuff, is fucking annoying to deal with because you have to fucking they can shoot you through windows and it's really like no good approach because like one entrance. So that can be super fucking annoying to deal with in the big like where 2 floors are exposed. Right? I mentioned this before. Like when the enemy is above you, bro, it's a nightmare to try and deal with. So especially when you're trying to S tier because you don't have time to go up a floor to capture them or arrest them. You know what I mean? Like you have to if you shoot them and get them to surrender, you have to like arrest them quickly or they'll just get up and continue to resist and shoot at you and stuff. So sure, you could probably take them out of the fight temporarily, but you'll have to go back and grab them and shoot them again. So, but yeah, I really like the layout. I like the enemies, and it wasn't like super difficult. It was challenging, but it wasn't super difficult. Definitely feel like this is one of my favorite maps in the entire game. Not gonna lie, putting that in the S tier. Next up, I think is Neon Tomb, which takes place at a nightclub, and you're going against the Hidden Hand, which you run into quite a lot in this game. You run into them on Greased Palms, this mission, and then later Relapse. So they're like Islamic extremist group in the game. So these guys are gonna be using like fucking. I think they use like it's not PKMs. I think they use RPDs, AKs, 74s and 47s, AK-74Us or AKS-74Us, um, stuff like that. And this is the introduction of like suicide bombers in vests. So like not only will the suspects themselves have bomb vest on, but so will the civilians. And it's a struggle if you're trying to do a lethal approach because if you shoot those civilians by accident, because it might be a little hard to differentiate, they will explode. So you'll lose that bonus. But if you're doing it with an S tier approach, a less than lethal approach, like I did, it's not nearly as bad because you can just shoot them anywhere and it won't affect the bomb vest at all. But the suspects wearing the bomb vest, it can be tricky because a lot of times they don't want to fucking surrender. You get hit with that glitch and then everyone's fucking dead from an explosion. On top of the fact that they really like to hide in corners, and if you don't react fast enough, you just die, and there's nothing you can do. On top of the fact that these enemies have really good weapons, You can die quickly. There's multiple floors. Open area dance floor that can be tricky to deal with. A lot of shit going on in this mission. It did take me a while to do it. It can be really hard to see in this map with the neon light and in the darker areas. So that's another thing. It's just it's a very hectic and wild map. But I think the introduction of the bomb vest and stuff and this new mechanics. And also there was a glitch too that they recently fixed where like if you're one of your members of your team disarm the vest without having the civilian surrendered, it will glitch them out to where they'll never surrender. So that's another thing. But I'm gonna put this in A tier, just not quite sure. I don't think I liked it as much as Rust or Sins of the Father. We're gonna or Into the Earth. We'll put it on Neon. We'll put Neon Tomb at the bottom of A. All right, buy cheap. No, I think it's Carries of Vine, then buy cheap by twice. Carries of the Vine is probably one of the maps I know the most because is a map that I ran a lot trying to do a challenge. But this is a map that has a lot of open areas, but for some reason it didn't really bother me nearly as much on this map as it did a lot of the others. And it's kind of weird because maybe it's the lack of body armored enemies because none of the enemies actually wear body armor in this map. Maybe it was that, but they do have like they have shotguns, they have Tech 9s, they have a wide hodgepodge of weapons. They have M16s, AKs, FALs. Don't quote me on the AK one. Tech 9s, shotguns, pistols. They have a wide variety of weapons, but they usually bunch up in areas that make them in areas specifically where it's easy for you to send a flashbang in and just clear them all out. I feel like they don't really struggle or resist very much to surrender. And they when I did it on S tier, I did it first try, and a lot of times they weren't sitting in those open areas, so they were not nearly as bad to deal with. But there is that back section where it's like that little church area. I don't really know what else to call it, where there's a long angle, and I don't need to repeat myself on that. You know how I feel about these long angles. On hard mode, it's really easy to fucking die because the enemy does not miss. Doesn't matter if full autoing while sprinting, they will fucking hit you with every bullet that comes out of their fucking gun. So, but Carries of the Vine, I'm putting in S tier just because it's fucking easy and I like it. I like the layout of it. I like the little underground areas. I like the courtyard area, and then like, you go all the way to the back, the garden and stuff. It's just a cool map, I think. Next, we have Buy Cheap, Buy Twice, which takes place in a car dealership. A mission that I was really surprised it took me or not that many attempts to beat. Maybe I just got lucky because there's a map that has a lot of windows, a lot of long angles, a lot of different parts and open areas that you have to go through in the car dealership. That can be really, really tricky to go through if there's a bunch of enemies stacked up. Because if there's a bunch of enemies stacked up like close together, it's easy to deal with. But they're spread apart in one big room. It's fucking damn near impossible to clear it out because your officers on S tier or hard mode are just completely inept. They will not defend themselves. They'll rather just fucking die. I've had so many clips of my fucking officers literally standing still, getting shot, and dying. So I just want to point that out. But a lot of enemies, a really big map, and a lot of open areas. But a lot of times the enemies are spread out. But there's like 3 or 4 enemies in one big room. It can be extremely tricky, if not damn near impossible, to finish this to do the map. So I'll put this in middle of towards the bottom of mid tier there. Okay, it leaves the last 2 maps of the base game, the 2 last maps in the base game that have not S tiered on hard yet. We have Relapse, which takes place in a hospital. Huge, 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 huge freaking map. You're once again going against the Hidden Hand, which you're going to be dealing with those bomb vests again. You're going to be dealing with enemies that have like RPDs, AK-74s, AK-74s, AK-47s, or AKMs, all that stuff. Some guys have pistols, and then they're also dressed up as nurses, so you have to deal with that dynamic. It's just, fucking intense. The problem is that this is also a bomb mission, just like the elephant, but you have a very generous amount of time. I think they give you like 30 minutes. So as long as you're not just absolutely fucking around the whole time, you should easily be able to get both bombs defused before they eventually go off. But the problem is that around those bombs is where a lot of the enemies like to huddle around. And that can be very difficult to do when it seems like these enemies never want to surrender, no matter how many times you shoot them, or if you shoot a 40 millimeter grenade, some of the times they just don't, or not everyone in the room gets affected by it, or you can't get there in time, so then you just fucking die because of that. It's a mess. Definitely one of the harder missions, and probably the mission, other than maybe Carriers of the Vine, that I know the most. And even with that fact, I still struggle. I still haven't done it. I think I'm probably about 10 fucking hours of worth of attempts on this mission, and I still have not been able to complete it on S tier on hard. I've had a couple deep attempts where I got to the last person, but there are like so many different areas, so many angles, so many long hallways you have to deal with, and big open areas like the cafeteria and stuff, and then you gotta deal with like dark rooms and stuff, like where the X-ray and the changing room and stuff is. It's just a lot to deal with. And since there's enemies are so spread out, and then once you get to a certain point, like I mentioned with Valley of the Dolls, once you get to a certain point, the enemies automatically know where you are, so you're just getting chipped away at to the point where you just get one shot no matter what. It's just, whew, it's a fucking doozy. But I really do like the map and the layout. Regardless, I'm putting it on top of A tier. Now we got Hide and Seek, which I think is the hardest map in the base game at this point. I've not S-tiered it yet on hard or at all in general. I haven't S-tiered on standard, but this map is also fucking massive. Has 26 enemies, which is the max. They're all heavily armed with Russian like Kalashnikov rifles. I think they also have M16s and whatnot. There's a lot of enemies. The fucking map is wide open. You're fucking. This is taking place on a fucking dock with a bunch of shipping containers and stuff. But then there's like around the terminal and stuff of this dock is fucking wide the fuck open, and it's honestly like worse, if not at the same level as Greased Palms, where there's just huge wide open areas. It's like that one area near the fucking terminal is just basically fucking. It's basically Greased Palms, except the enemies there's more enemies with higher caliber ammunition. So it's just a worst Grease Palms. And Grease Palms is a fucking difficult map to try and deal with. So you're dealing with like Kalashnikov assault rifles, M16s and stuff on this big ass open area where the enemy can just has insane awareness and aimbot. It's just a recipe for disaster. I even struggle to do this mission on hard with lethal weapons, not counting the fact that I'm when I try to S tier it, if I ever do S tier it, I'm gonna be using a shotgun. It's gonna be terrible. But overall, the conclusion of the main story of Ready or Not isn't too bad. I will say it's probably one of my favorite maps. Now we have the remaining 8 DLC missions. We'll start with, I think, the first DLC, which is Home Invasion. We have it starts with dorms, doesn't it? I think it's dorms, narcos, and lawmaker. So dorms, very simple, very easy map. My closest comparison to this is probably like a mix between Twisted Nerve and the Spider, like kind of the layout of the Spider, but with enemies as like Twisted Nerves. These enemies love to hide. A lot of them have knives, which instantly kills you. Other than that, they have pistols. Some of them have like the Mark 18, which is like an M4 style rifle, like an AR styled rifle that's fully automatic. Super difficult to try and deal with that because that can fuck you up. But there's like one or two people at the most that has it. The most thing you gotta worry about is motherfuckers running around with knives trying to stab you, because that shit will instantly fucking kill you if they get a hold of you. And a lot of times you just can't hear them. But other than that, super easy freaking map to complete. I think this is the map I did complete in like under 5 minutes or whatever. It was easy. Probably just gonna put it in like top of C. Like honestly, like it's fucking easy. Like I said. Next up is Narcos, where I actually really like the layout of this map. Going house to house and clearing it is super fun. Enemies have plates on, so it can be hard to deal with lethal weapons, and then also they have very power like assault rifles and stuff and AKMs and stuff. So pretty much every mission after this, everyone has like assault rifles. Let's just put that out there. Every single one of these missions, they have assault rifles. But the idea of just going house to house and clearing is absolutely fucking awesome. The yards can be kind of tricky in those like big long angles, like I keep mentioning. They can be tricky, but I just, like I said, I love the idea of just going house to house, busting in, clearing house, and then moving on to the next. I think it's fucking awesome. Definitely one of my more favorite maps, just because of that. Then Lawmaker is just taking place in a giant mansion. I don't remember there being a whole lot of enemies. I actually think this has like, I don't think any of these missions in Home Invasion have like a huge amount of enemies. To be honest, I don't really remember this mission very well, but I guess the layout was cool and all. I really don't remember what the enemies looked like or what they had. I'm pretty sure they had assault rifles and stuff, but I genuinely don't remember very much about this map at all. It's been so long since I beat it. Next up, we have Dark Waters DLC, which also has three maps. We have Mirage at Sea, Leviathan, and Three Layer Triad. Mirage at Sea, really cool map. I love how it's taking place on a yacht. Once again, going against like Islamic enemies, but some of them have like NATO rifles and stuff. Like P90 is not NATO rifle, but like people have some have P90s, AKMs, it's like a whole mix of weapons, but mostly assault weapons and stuff. There's also a little gimmick here where like at a certain point the suspects start executing hostages. There's also like one of I think the first mission where you actually have helicopter support, which is kind of something they introduced in this DLC. I think you have them like every mission. You have helicopter spotting enemies, which in my opinion is fucking unless you have the camera up, it's fucking completely fucking useless because they use like the cardinal directions like north, east, south, and west. You don't have a compass in the game, so like having callouts like that is fucking absolutely pointless. But it's still cool regardless. Like I said, I really like the yacht setup and the enemies are cool. The little guy you gotta capture as well is awesome, and the little gimmick where you have to kind of go fast because if you don't, look at the order to kill civilians and then you'll lose the mission. So that's really cool too. But the soft objectives can be pretty hard to find. I know that the one of them is spawns in a random location, which is the dead guy. But yeah, RJC I think is also going to go in S tier. Probably my favorite map of that DLC. Next up is Leviathan, which takes place on a offshore oil rig, and enemies have very powerful weapons. They like to group up in certain areas. There's a bunch of different levels to the map. It's also dark, so night vision is pretty important as well. And there's also small buildings around the oil rig itself, like on the platform that a lot of enemies hide in, and it's just a very confusing map in my opinion. Very confusing. But other than that, pretty much just like any other mission. A lot of enemies. They have assault rifles, and they can be triggered to make surrender. But from my recollection, there isn't like a lot of areas that are long, super long angles they have to worry about. So that's really cool. It's pretty much just all completely just tight quarter, close quarter combat. So we're gonna put this in the top of A. Then finally, to finish up Dark Waters, we have three-letter triad, which doesn't really take place on the ocean, which is kind of disappointing. Instead, it's kind of like another one of those bomb missions where you have to find the secret compound V, I guess, little thing there, and that's where pretty much all the fucking enemies huddle around. You have like two different type of enemies. You have like the kind of like the civilian attired enemies that don't have like really in, powerful weapons, and then you have like the kind of like the left behind kind of guys, like they're like PMCs, where they have armor, they're like full kit, they have M16s, M4s, and all that stuff. So You have quite a variety of enemies, and you have a. I don't really care for the layout of the map, but I do like the fact that they have that variety of enemy. Whereas like the easy, and then there's more difficult, more hardened guys. But the layout's kind of annoying. On top of that, you have helicopter support in this one as well. Like I said, in every one of these missions, in Dark Waters, you have helicopter support in the little like compound like element. I don't even know what to call it. It's cool too. I'm gonna just put this in like right here. All right, first we're gonna go with Hunger Strike, which takes place in a small like Mexican restaurant. Super easy, pretty much on the level of Thank You Come Again, but harder because the enemies are using uh, better weapons. But other than that, pretty much the same exact thing, except it also takes up 2 floors, but very small area, very easy, low number of enemies. I don't know, kind of like I said, same as like Thank You Come Again, pretty much. And then Stolen Valor, where in this mission is kind of like the same thing as 23 megabytes per second, except now they have traps and they have better weapons. So it's kind of like the same thing, but with traps and better weapons. And it takes up more floors instead of like 3, I think 23 megabytes per second have. It's like 4. It also might be 3. But the middle staircase is like fucking insanely difficult to try and clear because you have enemies at the top, you got enemies below. There's the outside area, and there's also the fire escape area. It's all just so difficult because if the enemies have the upper ground on you, it's just so fucking difficult to have to try and deal with them. It's a fucking tough mission, not gonna lie. It's probably one that I probably was definitely not expecting it to be as difficult as it was the S tier because of that. Like this shit really doesn't apply if you're just trying to do the mission normally. But if you're trying to do like S tier, bro, this shit is absolutely fucking miserable when you have enemies on multiple floors like that. And then also on top of that, trying to deal with traps and stuff, and then enemies being just ultimately aware of where you are is just annoying to deal with. But like I said, it's like fucking like I said, 23 megabytes per second, but like worse in a way. So that's all I got to say about that. But anyway, here's my tier list. We have Sins of the Father, Carries of the Vine, Mirage SC, Narcos, all in S. And rounding out the bottom, pretty really biased on this one. So honestly, if I was being more realistic about it, probably would be like B or A even. But since I struggled on this fucking mission so fucking bad, I have to put in an F. I have to put in an F. Some map has to take the cake, and it has to be Valley of the Dolls. This is my list. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in another one. Peace.